I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I am your host, Richard G. Medlock, and this is the Medlock Post radio show on June 25th, 2022. This is where we educate, entertain, enlighten, and empower. Welcome to the show today, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot to cover, a lot to talk about. This is a sombering time. I think in a lot of ways it's a wake-up call to a lot of Americans. And I'm going to try to address that. I'm not going to get into all this news that's going on, quotes, and all of that. This is my feelings, my thoughts, especially in the monologue, and then we'll go from there. Now, let me do our disclaimer, cover this here. The views and opinions on the Medlock Post are the views and opinions of your host and not necessarily the views and opinions of Spreaker.com, its corporations, affiliates, or other podcast streaming services. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, did you know this is June 25th? 6 months until Christmas. Have you started your shopping yet? Yeah, right. Yeah, everybody's just sitting out there right now going, okay, but the big joke there. All right, let's start with the monologue. These past few days have not been very good for the Democratic Socialists, to say the least. Matter of fact, it has been very bad. Yes, they passed the gun safety bill, and by all rights, it should be called the gun control bill. But there is fear on the left that SCOTUS will overturn this bill. And I'm not going to talk about the gun bill today. That's another time. However, not only did SCOTUS overturn Roe v. Wade and supported the Second Amendment of the Constitution with concealed carry law in North Carolina, but ruled that states could not discriminate against church schools and withhold church money from them, and ruled that the GOP can pursue lawsuits to uphold voter ID laws. What a week coming out of the Supreme Court of the United States. And these decisions went against everything the Democratic Socialists are hoping to achieve. Ever since the Judge Alito's opinion on Roe v. Wade was leaked last month, the left has gone berserk. And remember, the leaker has not been found or revealed. Coincidence? Threats were made against the 5 justices who were called conservative. Protests took place at their homes. A man was arrested trying to kill Judge Kavanaugh and possibly his family. Democratic Socialist leader in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, threatened the justices with, "They won't know what hit them if you don't do what we want you to do." A terrorist group called Jane's Revenge pops up and starts attacking and firebombing some pro-life pregnancy centers. Before the ruling, the number was up to 80. And the FBI just the other day says, "Oh, we're going to investigate." Yeah, right, sure. They claimed responsibility for the actions. Jane's Revenge threatened a night of rage if Roe versus Wade was overturned. Well, let me ask you this. What if it wasn't overturned? Were they going to go back and take back the fire bombings and pay for the damage? Don't think so. And Joe Biden himself said that there would be a mini revolution in America if Roe versus Wade was overturned. One suggestion that has come out is to abolish the Supreme Court. Politicians have said they will go around the Constitution. What the heck? They've been doing that for over 50 years. Why stop now? What foolishness from desperate people. Did they not hear the decision? It is not a federal law now, but it is left up to the states. They don't understand that. They just want to make trouble now. It's just mind-boggling. But with all the threats to the justices from the White House, the Senate, the House, and other political organizations and groups, the Supreme Court upheld the Constitution of the United States. Period. And amen. On Thursday, when the concealed weapon ruling came out in favor of the Second Amendment, the Democrat Socialists came unglued. When the ruling for Roe versus Wade overturned the previous 1973 judgment, they lost it completely and are seething mad. More threats were made at this time, and not just to the justices, but to America. The Department of Homeland Security issued warnings to Catholic churches and pro-life centers against pro-abortion groups pledging extreme violence. The left is in complete panic at this point and are having a psychotic temper tantrum and seething in rage because they are losing control. Losing control. And that is what drives them, that power to be in control. The very Constitution they are trying to destroy has been upheld as the law of the land. The rule of law is to prevail. And that's the title of today's show. The Constitution prevails. Not exactly what the anti-American and anti-Constitution group is wanting to happen. They thought they could intimidate and threaten the justices into doing what the Democratic Socialists wanted them to do. But no, a big no. Reality just slapped the Democratic Socialists upside the face with a 2x4. And it hurt, and they are stunned. They thought they were in control of everything, but the checks and balances of the United States Constitution have held up and do prevail. Could this be the shot heard round the world? Here is another important question. Are the Democratic Socialists trying to start a war or revolution in America? Their rhetoric and actions say yes. The Democratic Socialists have no principles to stand on anymore. They have thrown all common sense to the dogs. The only thing they have to stand on now is chaos, fear, division, hatred, and violence. Not a pretty picture to see in America. But this is what the Democratic Socialists are threatening and probably desire. All other power they have is gone. They will try to ram some bills through Congress before the November elections, trying to correct what they think are grievous errors. that will only drive voters away from them from all sides. If the bills get done come January, the new Congress will overturn them. We hope. In the Federalist, number 47, James Madison wrote a warning for our day. And this is, of course, coming from their experience and study of history. The reason on which Montesquieu grounds his maxim are a further demonstration of this meaning. Excuse me. Montesquieu was in Britain who got the Brits to go to the free bodies of government, legislature, executive, and judicial. He copied Cicero and Homer and others. Quote, James Madison from Federalist 47. Excuse me. Quote, when the legislature and executive powers are united in the same person or body, there can be no liberty because apprehensions may arise lest the same monarch or senate should enact tyrannical laws to execute them in a tyrannical manner. Continuing, were the power of judging joined with the legislature, the life and liberty of the subject would be exposed to arbitrary control, for the judge would then be a legislator. Were it joined to the executive power, the judge might behave with all the violence of an oppressor. Unquote. Look this up, folks. I mean, the Federalist number 47 is quite long, and this is about 3/4 of the way through. This is what the Democratic Socialists have been trying and attempting to do for 50 years, is to bring the free bodies of government together to do away with the checks and balances outlined in the Constitution of the United States. And a lot of that effort went away this week because the Supreme Court said no. No to these tyrannical and anarchic things that you're trying to put on the people. And this is why the Democratic Socialists are so afraid that this bill they just passed, and the House passed it last night or the night before, right after the Senate passed it, that this will be overturned because almost everything in that bill is unconstitutional. Again, that's a different show. We talked about that on Thursday. And Alexander Hamilton wrote in the Federalist number 9, quote, a firm union will be of the utmost moment to the peace and liberty of the states as a barrier against domestic faction and insurrection. It is impossible to read the history of the petty republics of Greece and Italy without feeling sensations of horror and disgust at the distractions with which they are continually agitated, and at the rapid succession of revolutions by which they were kept in a state of perpetual vibration between the extremes of tyranny and anarchy. I talked about this in a couple of shows ago in rule of law versus ruler's law. Go back and listen to episodes 2 and 3. And this is what he's talking about here. But a firm union will be the utmost moment to the peace and liberty of the states as a barrier against domestic faction and insurrection. In Abraham Lincoln's a proclamation for a national fast day, March 30th, 1863, and this was 2 months after the Emancipation Proclamation. Abraham Lincoln said this, quote, "We have been the recipients of the choicest bounties of heaven. We have been preserved these many years in peace and prosperity. We have grown in numbers, wealth, and power as no other nation has ever grown. But we have forgotten God. We have forgotten the gracious hand which preserved us in peace and multiplied and enriched and strengthened us. And we have vainly imagined in the deceitfulness of our hearts that all these blessings were produced by some superior wisdom or virtue of our own. Intoxicated with unbroken success, we have become too self-sufficient to feel the necessity of redeeming and preserving grace, too proud to pray to the God that made us. It behooves us, then, to humble ourselves before the offended power, to confess our national sins, and to pray for clemency and forgiveness." Unquote. This attitude among the American people today that Abraham Lincoln referred to in his proclamation in 1863 opened a door for a new religion to creep into our society, and that is the religion of secularism. This secularism denies God and moves to create laws without direction from our Creator. This secularism has taken hold and created in our country a society of barbarianism. We have seen for several years and see this completely exposed in the last few days from individuals, groups, organizations, media, and politicians who subscribe to the religion of secularism. We the people who believe in truth, right, our Creator, the greatness of America, and the Constitution must now, without hesitation, be bold in our actions to stand up and speak up to overcome the philosophies of tyranny and anarchy. There will be some very sobering days ahead. To overcome these challenges, we as citizens of America, we need to exercise our faith, reach out in mighty prayers, and remain loyal to America. The greatest challenge is to keep America strong and free. If we desire for our way of life to endure, we need to keep society strong, our economy strong, our faith in our Creator strong. We, the people, are the ones who will keep the American hope alive for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that's the monologue for today. Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes it's hard to wrap our head around what is going on. And the destructive forces against America are alive and well. And a lot of these so-called conspiracy theorists have been, looks like they've been pretty right all along. We've tried to warn you. We've been warned by people for 100 years about what's going on. It's paying attention. Now, I'm sure some of you can recite the oath of office that the president takes and our senators and congressmen take. Well, I want to remind you of those oaths. The oath of office for president. Quote, I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, unquote. Now, these are in the Constitution. Nobody just made these up. They're in the Constitution. Article 2. And then for congressmen and senators, here is their oath. Quote, I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter, so help me God, unquote. To the President, the Vice President, to the United States Senators and Representatives in the United States Congress, my question to you is, what do you not understand about this oath you swore to uphold? What is it that you don't understand about protecting, defending the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic? It did not say that you would become an enemy of the Constitution of the United States. And that's what many of you have become. In the Senate, 65 senators voted for the gun safety bill. But it was a gun control bill. 65. What was it, 212, 215 in the Senate? In the Congress? Did you know that 12 Democrats voted against it, but there were enough Republicans that voted for it to make sure that there was a majority vote for the bill? If no Republican had voted for it, it would have failed. So I ask you again, senators and congressmen, president and vice president, what do you not understand about this oath you swore to uphold? And again, you did not swear an oath to become an enemy to the Constitution. And when you become an enemy to the Constitution, then you become an enemy to America. And many of your comments over the last 2 days have shown that you are an enemy to the Constitution, that you are an enemy to the rule of law. And we, the American people, will hold you accountable in the coming elections. Now, I suggest to all states out there that have recall elections to start those now. And I wished our state had a recall election, but we don't. And that's sad. Every state should have one for times like this. Talking about a massive turnover in Congress. Jeez. Which just might happen come November. So be on your toes, folks. Because these Democratic Socialists, they still have power in Congress and in the White House. And they're going to use their tyrannical power to create as much chaos, fear, hatred, division, and violence as they can between now and November. If I'm wrong about that, after November, I will apologize. but I'm standing by that statement today. All right, let's kind of chill in here to move to this next segment. There is probably in the United States one person that has led the fight against Roe versus Wade. And this woman, Marjorie Dannenfelser, is the president of Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America. It's a nonprofit group that works to end abortion in the United States by electing anti-abortion politicians. Dannenfelser has dedicated her adult life to outlawing abortion. Now, she played a key role in 2016 in getting President Trump to commit to appoint U.S. Supreme Court justices who oppose abortion. And I don't like that wording, that oppose abortion, but who see that the right to an abortion is not in the Constitution. And this, folks, this is not a new argument. This was fought in 1973 when the battle was going on over this thing. When Roe versus Wade was being battled out. I remember this. And it's been the question. And there's other things that's going on that the Supreme Court will probably look at and maybe overturn some more. And those that subscribe to the religion of secularism are not going to be happy people. But Marjorie Dannenfelser was interviewed yesterday afternoon. She's 56 years old. She was interviewed by the Los Angeles Times. And the question was this: after decades working in anti-abortion politics, you are watching Roe versus Wade fall. In what sense is this a historical moment? Well, folks, we know it's historical. But anyway, her answer was this, quote, "It's the culmination of almost 50 years of work. There was no certainty that this moment would come at all. But every single time there's a failure or a setback, this movement has grown. And there is a marker of an authentic human rights movement. It draws more in difficulty than it does in success sometimes." It's an interesting answer. It's been a hard-fought battle, but it was worth it. Now, how many of you watched, matter of fact, I turned on the TV once I saw it on my phone, that the judgment went down, and all the cameras were outside the Supreme Court building. Did you notice the crowd, the pro-life crowd? The makeup of that crowd? Did you really? Did you notice the makeup of the crowd? Young Americans, men and women. I bet you thought it was probably a bunch of old white men and women, right? No, it was young people. That is a great hope for America, because this younger generation is coming to understand what America really is. All right. So then they asked, they said, "You've written, quote, no other issue, however worthy, carries a moral weight equal to that of the unborn child in the womb," unquote. How did you get from being a pro-choice Republican to believing that abortion is about human rights not women's rights? Great question. Appreciate them asking it. She said, I grew up in a fairly polite society. You just didn't think or talk about this issue. I think that polite society has kept the harsh reality of that human rights violation away from the public eye and from one individually. So I never thought about it. I never knew that I would have an abortion if I needed one. I just considered it part of living. But that ability to keep what an abortion is out of your thoughts, out of your mind, when I approach the reality of what the object of the abortion is, and then what happens in an abortion. I mean, it is really hard to ignore the reality of a procedure that tears a small human apart, limb from limb. It's that imagining the too horrible to imagine that finally set my thoughts in process. The next question they asked was, what do you say to the many women who will now take to the streets to protest, upset that the government is making a decision for women that violates their bodily autonomy? Loaded question. Okay, here's her answer. Quote, peace is going to be found. There's that hope, ladies and gentlemen. Peace is going to be found. Back to her. When we as a country serve women as they deserve to be served, we don't make them choose, or we don't influence them to choose one over the other. We serve both woman and child, and serving them both is going to require a lot of us. I believe that we can do it together. Going back to what Alexander Hamilton was talking about, a union trying to keep peace. Back to Marjorie. Here's a voice of reason and calm. Oh, excuse me, not her. This is me. Sorry. Here's a voice of reason and calm in the chaos of today's America. She has hope for a brighter future at the end of the day. This is where we are, ladies and gentlemen. This is where we are. Let me ask you a question. Aren't you glad we still have the Second Amendment? So these businesses can protect their property? Just not be run over by lawbreakers? These people like Zane's Revenge and BLM and Antifa that are anarchists, full, abridged anarchists? Aren't you glad we still have the Second Amendment? That our founding fathers had that great foresight? Yeah. Okay. Interesting article caught my eye this morning. And I didn't include the paper it was in. It says the headline is misleading, but I'm going to read the headline. Almost 100 prosecutors from 29 states vow not to prosecute women who seek abortions or the medics who provide them after Roe versus Wade was overturned. Okay. Again, did they not hear the ruling yesterday? It did not make a law that said if you get an abortion, you'll be prosecuted. If you do it, you'll be prosecuted as a doctor or a medic. It didn't say that. It didn't create a new law. It just did away with a bad law. And it wasn't 100 prosecutors, it was 84. And it wasn't 29 states, it was 26. A group of 84, back to the article, a group of 84 prosecutors, including some from states where a trigger ban will take effect, have said they will not file charges against women seeking abortions. Now, a trigger ban was where states had already passed bills that said that they would ban abortion or reduce abortions if Roe versus Wade was overturned. So when the Supreme Court said we're overturning Roe versus Wade, those laws were triggered in. Boom, they became law immediately. The legislature didn't have to do anything. And yes, you can put that in a bill. The prosecutors have signed a statement. Now, this had to be organized before this. Most people knew Roe versus Wade was going to be overturned because of the Judge Alito's opinion that was leaked last month. Well, this is already done. This is already organized because this stuff came out immediately. The prosecutors have signed a statement saying they will also not press charges against medical professionals who provide the procedure. Wow. Now, what's interesting about this, ladies and gentlemen, is that almost all of these prosecutors got into office with the backing of, drum roll, George Soros. So here were some of the cities that were represented. Washington, D.C., our nation's wonderful capital, New York City, Los Angeles, Detroit, Philadelphia, Atlanta, and beyond. Now, those are cities with some of the highest crime rates in America. Why? These were the cities that defunded the police, and the prosecutors, funded by George Soros, or influenced by George Soros, are influenced by those that hate the Constitution. Oh, you can't prosecute these poor people. They've committed a crime. It's not fair. I mean, they're letting murderers walk. Go back to 2020. The riots with BLM and Antifa that summer, maybe a handful got prosecuted. Out of the hundreds that were arrested, they dropped the charges. Let them walk. Billions of dollars worth of damage. Destroyed businesses, destroyed lives. Hey, you were caught up in the moment. No big deal. This will come back to haunt them. These commitments. And I bet you that these prosecutors' oaths are similar to the ones I read earlier. You think? Yeah, I know so. A lot to think about, a lot to focus on. And that's why Richard Medlock is here to try to get you to think. Again, don't take what I say for granted. Look it up. Do your research. Go read the Federalist Papers. It's an eye-opener. Read the Constitution if you've never read the Constitution, and read the Declaration of Independence. And there are a lot of good books out there that you can read to help you understand that. Read Ayn Rand. I love her. Escaped from communist Soviet Union, came to America, loved capitalism, loved America, loved human rights, etc. So that's interesting. I'll bring her up because I'm going to close with one of her quotes. And I think that's it's appropriate for today in what's going on. And I can tell you today, June 24th, I have not seen any news this morning. I was working on this. I didn't want to go to the news and let that fog my thinking process. Ayn Rand, quote, "Since man's mind is his basic tool for survival, his means of gaining knowledge to guide his actions, the basic condition he requires is the freedom to think and to act according to his natural judgment, his rational judgment, This does not mean that a man must live alone and that a desert island is the environment best suited to his needs. Men can derive enormous benefits from dealing with one another. A social environment is more conducive to their successful survival, but only on certain conditions." And that, folks, is the Medlock Post radio show for today. Let's go out listening to the American flag.